Welcome to the latest episode of the Avoiding Chores podcast. I'm your host, Jim Sear, and I talk a little about some Garmin outdoor recreation and things that I've been doing to avoid chores over the last few days. This is the dog days of summer, getting very close to the return to school, so we'll have a lot of stuff to talk about this week. All right, let's start off with a round of Q&As. These are comments that have been left on my various YouTube channels on Garmin tutorials or other stuff. And you'll get to hear my replies to this. So just a dude commented only 7 hours ago on my Garmin eTrex 22X how to update the firmware. He says here, how come I only got 2 updates and device software is not included? So that is a couple of, if I understand the question right, basically it's 2 things. So one of the first things I always recommend people when they buy a device is you plug it in, you learn how to do a reset, and you plug it in to do the update firmware. Because as Garmin has been notorious the last few years and until recently, they don't put a lot of emphasis on software until after a device ships. And that means that there's a lot of updates that come up, a lot of new expensive units have little bugs, and then it's not only 6 to 8 months later that things start to look pretty good. Mary, he was mentioning here, I assume he plugged it into Garmin Express, and of the updates available were probably a couple things, but the device software wasn't included or the new firmware. A couple reasons. One, it could just be that you bought it when that version was flashed, which is normal. The other thing too, that is the only reason for that. Their device software, there's a couple different components. So you actually have the actual firmware, which will be all the functionality of the app. There's also a couple of GPS related tables. One of them is the GPS chip, another one is time zones, and another one is a language file. So you have a few different files, and all of them don't release at the same frequency. And also, it also depends on your model number. So there could be some stuff that was 22X specific, and then if you have the 32X, you might have something on a different cadence because of the electronic compass and different things like that. So that could be the reason for that. Troy commented on my Kodiak Canvas truck video here. How is it at minus 20 Fahrenheit? I only went down to 5 degrees or so Celsius, which is quite a ways from his minus 20. I mean, it's like anything else, right? You either, depending where you are, a lot of people will use, if they're off-grid, the Mr. Buddy propane heater or a catalytic heater, which I would not use. I would just spend the money and buy thick sleeping bags. The big issue here is you have that all that air underneath, so you probably want something with a lot of insulation underneath you. At least your back's not cold. Especially on my setup, I had the deck drawer system where I had basically a foot of open air underneath me. So, it's just like anything else. I mean, a lot of people on YouTube, they do a lot of winter camping. There was a point, people, not too long ago, that people would just march into the woods in the winter and camp overnight with just a backpack, right? So now that we've evolved under truck camping, overlanding, and all that stuff, it's the same principles. Getting insulation and staying warm. So, yeah, that's all I got for that. Lawrence commented on my Vivo Active 4 unboxing. He said, you got beauty face on, which I have no idea what that means. Let's move on to the next one. Rhino Games comments on my DeLorme InReach, the original DeLorme InReach video. How many hours of continuous use do you get? Does InReach offer updates now that they're owned by InReach or i.e. Garmin? So he's talking about the hockey puck InReach, the very first one, the black one that uses AA batteries. Forget the specs. It's written in the description of the video, if not on my review page on avoidingchores.com. But the second question is, does Garmin offer updates to older InReach devices? The answer is I will say yes, because every once in a while I'll plug in all of my InReach devices because I have the I don't have this. I don't have the original one anymore, but I have the SC Explorer, Explorer Plus, and SE Plus. So I got 4 handhelds, and I update them. I plug them into Garmin Sync, and I do a sync. And I believe I saw some updates, especially on the older stuff. So definitely after a while, there will be less and less updates on the functionality. But I would say that if there's something really critical, they would have to, because there's a lot of people using those devices. And plus, Garmin will probably know right now how many of those original hockey pucks are still in service or suspended. So as long as there's people still using them, I would assume that they'll still support that. Another Siraplan comments on my GPS map 62, 64 area calculation video. Comments here how to plot this area. So basically on the 62, on 64, 66, there's the area calculation app on it. And what that does is that you start anywhere. Let's say you want to measure the perimeter of a property or a field or whatever to get the area. And this app basically just starts a track at your point, and then you walk around it, and then you hit stop, and then that does a little bit of math, and then it gives you a number as to your calculation. Now, you can do this without the area calculation. You can do this with any GPS device. All you need to do is know math, right? Because all these mapping tools or applications, anything you do with the GPS, it relies on being able to measure a couple things. A point, segment, which is the straight line between 2 points, and a polygon, which is a shape, square, triangle, hexagon, circle, which is a lot of segments, right? So an area is really a polygon. You're measuring a polygon. So what you can do is you can start a new track, a new activity, whatever, go around in a circle, and then you hit stop, and then you can take that GPX file. If you can't do it in the Map62, you can also bring it into any mapping software. QGIS is the open source mapping program. I believe that you're able to do that. I'm sure you can just Google, GPS functions, just upload a GPX, and they'll be able to calculate it. So it's not too bad. And I'm sure somebody wrote a tutorial how to do this manually. So, which actually, you know what? It's a pretty good question. I should probably make a note and see that could be a tutorial I can do. Simple N comments on my Vivo Active 3, how to adjust heart rate monitor settings. Question about the 1 hour reminder to move. Is it possible to set the alarm to move every hour during the day? Thanks. That is a good one. I think now with the firmware, they've set it up to coincide with your bedtime hours. So if you want to go to bed, if you're going to bed, let's say at 10 o'clock at night, and you get up at 6, that means that at 7 a.m., 1 hour after you're supposed to be woken up, you'll get the time to move. And I'm saying this because this is what my watch does. Vivo Active 4 is doing. And I think and I don't tend to remember that having that same functionality when I briefly had the Vivo Active 3. But yeah, I think now with the firmware, I think they've just been able to do that. So I'm going to say yes, you can. As long as you have your sleep settings set up as to when you're expected to go to bed, you'll get your reminders then. And then I did a couple of Mavic compilation video. I just, ironically, I had some, during our vacation, I flew my Mavic Mini, which is probably the only opportunity I had to really fly it, almost a year that I've owned the damn thing. Anyway, I uploaded a compilation of clips over those last couple weeks there. And anyway, seems like a lot of people have been buying the Mavic Mini, but Steve from Outdoor Adventures, he upgraded to the Mavic Air 2, and he posted a kind of a review video. He kind of just loves it. A little bit bigger in size, a little bit more stability, works a little bit better with the wind conditions. And I agree with him too, because he lives on the coast around North Carolina. I'm up here, and there was a comment here that from a UK, Bogdan, hope to be able to fly it too out here in the UK. And same thing, any coastal areas, you have to deal with wind. In the Mavic Mini, while great, you really got to pay attention of the wind speed, because the more windy it is, let's say under 30 kilometers an hour, after that they don't recommend it. But anything below that, the motors are working a lot harder to keep this drone in the air, as opposed to a completely dead, calm day where you're able to maximize the flight time. So anyway, that's it. One more. Did I mention this last time? Yeah, I think that's it. That's it for questions. Again, folks, if you do have a question on a Garmin, you can check out the list of tutorials I've done on gps.training website. Just simply enter in your browser gps.training. You'll see the complete list. Or if you want to browse around, go to avoidingchores.com. You may have to, it's not as neatly organized, but you'll be able to find the same content there. All right, I'm going to do a rant. I don't usually do this, but I saw something this morning and I posted on Twitter. I said, I'm going to keep the rant for the podcast or live stream. Basically, I've been going out and doing 5-kilometer walk or hikes every day, just to try to get rid of this COVID body, which is getting out of control, to be quite honest. But anyway, I was in the parking lot of Second Lakes Provincial Park here in Lower Sackville. I got out and there's this big billboard, and there was something posted on the billboard or bulletin board of the info of the trail that caught my attention. I said, oh, a QR code. What's this? Now, there's a lot of history that I'm going to get into here, but basically, I saw a QR code, and with my smartphone, now you can just flash the camera, and the camera recognizes the QR code, and everything opens up. Anyway, point is, QR code pointed to a website, and the website talked about a trail. And once I started browsing through the website, I'm thinking, geez, this is eerily familiar to what I was trying to do 6-7 years ago. And then I found the about, I was scrolling through and I see some of the names or some of the stuff. And I'm thinking, I saw some names and that got me a little bit more agitated. And I guess I have to go back a couple years where as Avoiding Chores was getting formed, basically I was sitting on, or I had accumulated a lot of outdoor assets that could be converted into content that might be useful. So in other words, I had a lot of GPS data on hiking trails, and based on my previous experience with geocaching associations and what I had learned so far with the YouTube stuff, it's like, I just need to package this content into something that people would like on their phones, because this is where it's at. So I had tried an iPhone app to try to leverage that kind of stuff, NS Trails. And then I also developed an ebook, which was more multimedia. We had the GPS track overlaid on a map, which I spent hours developing a map style using GIS information, public data stuff. So you had a map, I had a breakdown of the trail, I had very more icon-driven stuff. I had stuff in themes and all that stuff, and how I wrote the description and directions to the trailhead, and basically leveraging a lot of the multimedia stuff. So if you had a connected phone with data, everything was there. And anyway, this QR code brought to the website. So these partners, so at one point I needed partners. I needed the hiking establishment to anoint what I was doing, or try to support me or support them and do whatever. So there was a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, I tried trying to get selling the app, or trying to get a support, or getting a collaboration. Almost got something going. Didn't work out. Complete radio silence after a while. There was a few other e-publications that were eerily similar to what my specific format. And basically, what I used to do was to post on these billboards QR codes to point towards the ebook. This was like 6-7 years ago. So now I'm seeing it, and basically I'm seeing basically some names that was related to the establishment that I was trying to get things going 6 years ago, and where it's like they're just doing themselves. So it's like, you rather go and get grant money to build stuff from scratch. There's stuff already built. And do I feel a little bit bitter? A little bit. I'm a little bit bitter of some of this stuff. Am I happy to see people essentially copying all the stuff that I was trying out 6 years ago? They're doing it now? Yeah. It validates that I was onto the right thing. Now, mind you, I may have been a little bit early with a few things, but yeah, this whole trying to build hiking eminence here in Nova Scotia was kind of short. It wasn't quite as long. No, I got distracted with a whole bunch of different things after that, but it's just unfortunate that I couldn't bring certain projects to its full potential. And a lot of stuff has potential, but the thing that I learned from that and why I started avoiding chores was basically stop relying on other people, right? If you want to do something right, you do it yourself, or you really got to do it. But of course, everything takes money, and you can only go so far with your time and your internal money. So that's why some of these things I was doing was just stopping after a point. But anyway, that was my rant. Maybe people are like, oh, you're just bitter about a QR code? It goes a little bit more than that. I'm not the type of guy that goes into that. But anyway, Sackville, Second Lakes. Nice little stuff. Being a provincial park, they really got to start developing some of the secondary trails that are there. They do have the parking lot and outhouse in, so that's nice. They do need to maybe do some winter maintenance. Like they need to have this really big area, green space, that you can't really reach. You can't do nothing in it. So what's the point of going? But anyway, that's it. Man, I tell you, that was shorter. But I will have, what I will need to do is do a full retcon history, because, I'm thinking back of all the shenanigans we got into, me and a few other people there, trying to do things that was right, and having people that were a little bit jealous. I should do that. That was mostly during the geocaching stuff. It was good stuff. Maybe because Facebook was reminding me of certain things that were coming up, but anyway. August 15th is the day that I'm recording this segment here, and today is Acadian Day. August 15th is when we celebrate that. So for those of you who don't know, Acadians are the mostly French settlers that arrived here in North America, arrived in Port Royal here in the early 1600s, and they spent about 100 years on the other side of the Bay of Fundy. I think they started up in St. Croix, up in the New Brunswick side, kind of a little bitter, but then they kind of settled and thrived on the other side of the Bay of Fundy on Nova Scotia. So from Digby way over to Wolfville, that is where Acadians were building up. And then there were, again, Acadians going all the way around towards Amherst, Moncton, kind of that area there. So, there was nice settlements. There was dike systems that they put in to start maximizing the farming across the marshes, across many areas. And then, of course, history books around 1750s, that kind of stuff. You start having the British started to have enough of the Acadians, and the Acadians were kind of neutral. They weren't necessarily French. They were their own separate people, kind of not paying attention to stuff. They were kind of neutral, but, they were supporting mostly France. But anyway, British decided one day to start kicking people out of the area. And this happened over a period of time. So they rustled up people onto their boats, burnt everything to the ground, and then shipped them off to really crappy areas such as New Orleans, Maine, New Brunswick. Basically everywhere that you'll see Acadia. And Acadia is the French flag with the yellow star. And so my forefathers, so people always ask, seer, is that French? Yes, it is French. First seer arrived in Port Royal in 17 something. Few years before 1755. He was there for a while. He was an armorer, making armor. And then I think around the period where stuff was hitting the fan, he kind of grabbed his wife, I think, and and got the heck out of Dodge. I think he ended up in the Amherst area for a little bit, around the marshes. And I think after that, they further generations moved their way up to Fredericton and followed the St. John River Valley. They made it a little bit into the Quebec now area, Kamouraska and all that, but they came back down the St. John River, and basically my branch settled between there, the Edmundston and Grand Falls area there, and ever since. So, been here for, Sear's been here for a while, and depending on the family tree branches, you check it out. So yeah, it all comes down to the same dude. So so that's us today. So basically, the only highlight, if we were to go somewhere, is to go visit Grand Prairie at Wolfville, which is a UNESCO site. This is actually the site, Parks Canada site of the actual one of the locations of the expulsions of the Acadians. I think it's a reconstructed church, and there's also a spot where they actually landed and got people on the boats, the landing area, and there's a big settlement there or a cross or. So when you're visiting the Wolfville area, definitely check that out. It's definitely worthwhile to go visit, especially if you're part of the affected people, like myself, that you want to find out what happened. So it's a pretty powerful story. All right, that's it for the episode for this week. Hopefully you found it interesting. I'll have a little bit more to talk about emergency preparedness and hurricanes next week here. People are getting up here and they want to rustle around the house, so I don't have the silence that I need to record this podcast for you. Anyway, folks, go check things out on avoidingchores.com or gps.training. And you can always leave a comment on one of the videos or send me a message. I will always get to them. Hopefully you send it to the right one, because I've noticed sometimes some of the DMs that are available via Instagram, Twitter, whatever, I don't see it or read it in time. So don't be insulted if I don't reply ever. It's 99% likely that I didn't even see it, because it's something I don't check a lot. So anyway, folks, hopefully you're enjoying your summer. Hopefully we're going to be adjusting to the back to school regime pretty soon, and I'll give you guys a little update on my TRX exercise routine, which I started a couple days ago.